Before the story starts, I'd like to give a thanks to all my viewers and subscribers. Thank you for clicking on this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps. The rain pounded against the windows, a relentless, drumming cacophony that filled the otherwise silent house. The night was thick with darkness, only occasionally pierced by the sharp crack of lightning that illuminated the empty rooms for brief, terrifying moments. Mia was curled up on the couch, a blanket pulled tightly around her. She had never liked storms, especially when they were this intense. Her parents had left earlier in the evening for a weekend getaway, leaving her alone for the first time in her life. She had convinced them she was old enough, brave enough. But as the storm raged outside, she felt far from brave. The house was old, with creaking floors and groaning walls that seemed to speak in the language of ghosts. Each creak, each groan, sent a fresh wave of anxiety through her. She tried to focus on the TV, but the sound of the rain and the occasional rumble of thunder made it hard to concentrate. The news was a blur of bad stories, crime, disasters, things that made her feel even more uneasy. Then she heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible noise, like the scrape of metal on metal. It was faint, nearly drowned out by the storm, but Mia heard it. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. The sound came again, louder this time, closer. It was coming from the back door. Mia's heart raced as she slowly rose from the couch, her eyes fixed on the direction of the noise. Her mind raced, trying to rationalize what she had heard. Maybe it was just the wind, she thought, or a tree branch. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. She moved cautiously to the kitchen, where she had a clear view of the back door. As she approached, she saw the handle slowly turning. Her blood ran cold. There was no time to think. Mia darted towards the pantry, slipping inside and closing the door just as the back door creaked open. She pressed herself against the shelves, her heart hammering in her chest so loudly she was sure it would give her away. She heard them. 2 men. Their voices were low, muffled by the sound of the rain, but she could tell they were arguing, their words heated and tense. "She's gotta be here," one of them said, his voice rough and angry. "The lights are on." "Shut up and keep looking," the other snapped back. "We get what we came for and get out." Mia's mind raced. What did they want? Why were they in her house? She had no idea, but she knew she couldn't let them find her. Her phone was on the couch, useless now. She was trapped, with no way to call for help. The men moved through the house, their footsteps echoing off the wooden floors. They were methodical, checking each room, each closet. Mia could hear them getting closer, their voices clearer. She pressed herself deeper into the pantry, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her heart leaped into her throat as one of the men entered the kitchen. She could see his shadow moving through the crack in the pantry door. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a menacing presence. He moved to the fridge, opening it and rummaging through the contents, muttering to himself. Mia held her breath, praying he wouldn't check the pantry. But then, the shadow paused, and she knew. He was staring at the pantry door. The man slowly approached, his hand reaching out to the door handle. Mia's heart pounded in her ears, her body trembling with fear. She could see the handle turning, feel the seconds stretch into eternity. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the living room. The man froze, his hand still on the handle. The second man shouted something from the other room, and the man at the pantry let go of the handle, turning away. He hurried out of the kitchen, his footsteps thundering as he ran toward the sound. Mia exhaled shakily, her body trembling. She knew she couldn't stay in the pantry. It was only a matter of time before they came back. Carefully, she eased the door open and slipped out, her eyes darting around the room. The men were still in the living room, distracted by whatever had caused the noise. She needed to get out, now. The front door was too far, too risky. Her only option was the back door, the same one the intruders had used. Mia crept through the kitchen, moving as silently as possible. She could hear the men arguing again, their voices rising in anger. They were frustrated, desperate. They wouldn't leave until they found her. She reached the back door and carefully unlatched it, cringing as it made a soft click. She paused, listening. The men didn't seem to notice. She opened the door just wide enough to slip through, the cold rain immediately soaking her. But she didn't care. Freedom was just a few steps away. As she stepped outside, the full force of the storm hit her. The wind howled, the rain pouring down in sheets. She could barely see a few feet in front of her, but she didn't hesitate. She bolted into the night, her bare feet splashing through the mud. Behind her, she heard the shouts of the men. They had realized she was gone. Panic surged through her, but she didn't look back. She ran through the backyard, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The darkness was disorienting, but she knew she had to keep moving. She reached the edge of the yard and slipped through the gap in the fence, cutting across her neighbor's lawn. The house was dark, no sign of life inside. She couldn't risk stopping to knock. She had to keep going. Mia made it to the street, her legs burning with exhaustion. The rain was relentless, making it hard to see, hard to think. But she pushed forward. Her only thought was to get as far away as possible. As she ran, she heard a car engine roar to life behind her. The men had found their vehicle. Mia's heart pounded even harder as she sprinted down the street, her feet slapping against the wet pavement. She didn't know where she was going, but she couldn't stop. The headlights of the car cut through the darkness, sweeping across the street as the vehicle sped after her. Mia ducked into an alley, her body screaming in protest. She was soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face, but she forced herself to keep moving. She stumbled out of the alley into another street, her vision blurred by the rain and tears. The car was still behind her, closing in. She was running out of time, out of options. Up ahead, she saw it, a house with lights on, a beacon in the darkness. With every last bit of strength, she ran toward it, praying someone was home, someone who could help her. She reached the door and pounded on it, screaming for help. The car screeched to a halt behind her, the doors slamming open. Mia turned to face them, her heart pounding as the men approached, their faces twisted with anger and frustration. The door behind her opened, and a man stepped out. He was older, with a stern face and a shotgun in his hands. He took one look at Mia, then at the men, and raised the weapon. "Get off my property," he growled, his voice cold as steel. The men hesitated, their eyes flicking between Mia and the gun. Then, without a word, they backed away, retreating to their car. Mia watched, trembling, as they sped off into the night. The old man lowered the shotgun and looked at her, his expression softening. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentler now. Mia nodded, too shaken to speak. The man guided her inside, away from the storm, away from the nightmare she had just escaped. But even as the door closed behind her, the terror lingered, her heart still racing from the horror of that rainy night.